Welcome back, fellow internet adventurers. Get ready for another wild ride through Reddit's strangest stories. We're diving deep into the internet's quirkiest corners. Grab your popcorn and join us on this adventure. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Let's get started. My name is Donald, and I am 56 years old. This is my first time trying to explain my life. I am married to Lorraine, who is 45 years old, and we have a 13-year-old daughter. A few months ago, something happened while my wife, daughter, and I were visiting Istanbul. We were part of a large group consisting of 3 families, totaling around 16 people. The trip had come to an end, and we were supposed to return together. We all gathered at the Istanbul airport for our flight back to Chicago, which is an 11-hour journey. After accounting for everyone, we learned that the flight was delayed by 6 hours. Since we still had time before our flight, we all went to the lounge, and to our surprise, it was empty. We were the only people there. Everyone gathered and started chatting, sharing smiles and stories about Turkey and the delicious food we had. I went out for a smoke and returned after 15 minutes. As I walked closer to my wife, I noticed a slim figure near her. My heart began to race, not from the nicotine, but for another reason. The closer I got, the faster it beat. I could almost hear my heart trying to leap out of my chest. My mind went blank, taking me back 20 years. I was holding her hand in the church, right beside me. I said, "I do," and then kissed her. I took her home, and we built a life together. Suddenly, I was back in the lounge. I walked near my wife and told her I wanted to get some air, then stepped outside. I did not look at the woman who was now talking to my wife as I walked out. The floodgates to my memories opened up. She was right there, and she was happy. I was happy. I closed my eyes, and I was back in Columbus, Georgia, right beside the Chattahoochee River. We sat there often. Her name is Maria. She is my life. I have always loved her ever since I saw her in college. She was mine. We got married and moved in together. Married life started great. I began working as a journalist, and she started as a financial expert. My job required me to travel a lot. I went places, covering stories from war to famine. All this while, I always kept in touch with her. Her sparkling eyes made my day when I was at home. We spent our time making love and enjoying great food. She used to cook, and it was delicious. "Will you always love me like this?" Maria asked while looking into my eyes. I stroked her bare back and told her, "Forever and ever." The first 2 years of our lives went by smoothly, and it never felt like there would ever be any trouble in paradise. We decided to delay having kids as we needed to make a name in our careers. We wanted to make good money and settle down. The only trouble we had was that we were not able to spend time with each other. I traveled, and soon Maria's job also required her to travel. The only point of discontent we had was my mother. She lived alone and often wanted to see me, but my wife never liked her. I never asked why my mother was such a soft and caring person. I tried to keep them separated and maintain a balance between them. It was in January that my mother fell ill. I told my wife I was going to her to care for her. She was not happy, as I had just returned home from covering a story in Iraq. We had an argument because she wanted me to hire help for my mother instead of going personally. I told her that my mother was old and this might be the last time I saw her alive. Maria was unhappy, but I did not dwell on that. 3 days later, my mother died in my arms. I was devastated. After her burial, I came back home, and Maria once again complained about my mother. I was shocked and could not understand what she was trying to say. She put us in so much trouble. She should have been in the hospital from the start. I remained silent, still trying to understand what Maria hoped to gain by demeaning the dead. I shot back, "She is dead. She will not come back and respond, so zip it." Maria got angry, and that week we did not speak to each other. I broke the ice by taking her out for dinner. That night, we made wild love. The following week, I went to Afghanistan to cover the historic Silk Road. Meanwhile, Maria was getting promotions and increasing her salary. I returned 2 weeks later, and this was the time I went to Afghanistan. I reached home, and Maria, like always, greeted me with a big hug and a sloppy kiss. At dinner, I noticed she seemed a bit tense. "We need to make some changes in our lives," she said. "What changes do you want?" I asked. "You being away from home for long durations isn't helping me." There are days I long for your touch, and I come home to an empty bed. I don't want to cheat on you. So either find a job that keeps you near me or find me a job so I can travel with you. At the same time, I was happy that she was honest and spoke the truth. I told her I would find another job. The topic was closed, and the next morning, I resigned from my job and started looking for a job closer to home. I soon found one at the local TV channel. It didn't pay as much as my previous job, but it kept me near Maria. Your salary is down by 30%. Are you kidding me? She was angry when I told her about my new job. I tried to explain that this would be a downside for a stationary job. Even the most educated and intelligent people sometimes refuse to acknowledge facts and still want things to go their way. It wouldn't be possible to get a stationary job and still receive a raise unless I change my profession. She was upset that I now brought less money home and that her lifestyle would be impacted. We continued like this for the next 3 months, and things started to go downhill. We talked less, and at night, we rarely had any intimacy. Her demeanor changed from loving wife to nagging partner. We could find faults in everything, and there wasn't a single day I went to bed without feeling angry. It got so bad that one night she asked me to stop breathing because my breathing was disturbing her sleep. A few days later, I couldn't find my phone, so I picked up my wife's phone to call my number. I found her phone locked. It was something new. I did not have any lock on my phone, and as far as I remember, she never had any lock on hers. Why was there a lock? Is she hiding something? It was a Thursday night when she came back after a late-night party with her office girls. I heard the doorbell and opened the door. She stood there in a black dress, her hair all disheveled, no lipstick. What happened to you? I asked, holding her. I danced a bit too much, and now I am tired. I guided her to her bedroom. She removed her dress to change into her usual nightdress, and that was a big mistake. She had no panties, and I could see a bruise on her left thigh. She never goes out without her panties. Did she go commando today? Or did she lose them somewhere that night? I could not sleep and just lay there. Being a journalist by nature, I wanted to know the truth. I know a lot of people who can help me find it out, but I knew my instincts and needed no help. 3 weeks later, I was outside the Motel 6, on Victory Drive. It was 2:30 p.m., and I tracked Maria's car to this motel. I walked towards room number 12, opened the lock, and saw the monitor right across the door. In the other room was my beloved wife. There she was on all fours with her blonde lover in action. Her blonde lover, Steve Bowman, my dear enemy from college, always had a thing for Maria and once even took her out on a date before she started dating me. To me, good Maria screamed in ecstasy, and Steve obliged. By now, my tears no longer flowed, was dead inside my heart after 3 weeks of investigation and running around. Maria dug up results that I never wanted. I wanted to break open the door and do something very stupid, but I had promised the motel manager that I would refrain from violence. He was repaying an old favor and set a single condition: no violence and no property damage. He agreed and personally helped me install the recording devices in the room, but violence was never off the table. Outside the motel, I smiled and walked out, got in my car, and parked right behind the only Mustang in the lot. It belonged to Steve. I took out my dear old ice pick and punctured all 4 tires. I waited. After an hour, they came out, Steve holding Maria by her bare waist. I captured that on camera, then put my camera back and stepped out of my truck. I walked towards them and stood right in front of them. Maria was silent, looking like she saw a ghost. Steve had a sinister grin on his face, a symbol of taking another man's wife. He still held her by the waist while Maria meekly tried to remove his hand. "Hey, Dawn," she smiled. "What are you doing here?" I stared back at her. She fell silent. She tried again. "I can explain. It's not what you think. I'm not thinking, just observing." My eyes pointed at Steve's hand on her waist. "I guess he has taken away my wife." I smiled. "No, it's not that. We just had a meeting here," she spoke. "A meeting that involved getting on all fours and getting drilled from behind." "Did he do you good?" I asked, and she gasped, as just a few minutes ago she had uttered the same words. "All your actions are on video and will be going to your office. I will make sure it reaches all our friends and family, and yes, it will be going to Linda." Her dad, Steve, screamed, "Leave Linda out of this." "Yes, She has no business in this, Maria added. Her husband is screwing my wife. So yes, we have a lot of unfinished business. To be precise, I smiled and added, Linda has already seen your actions as they happened and is just waiting for a copy of the video so she can drag your sorry ass into court for a divorce. If I were you, I would prepare to say goodbye to dear old Mustang, as it will be sold to pay for the settlement. He was furious now and lunged at me. A big mistake. Years spent in places like Iraq and Afghanistan had made me a tough man. I had been among warriors, fighters, and people trained to kill. Did they teach me a few tricks? He threw a right hand, and I blocked it, ducked forward, and landed my left on his chin. He dropped like a bag of potatoes. He got up, wobbled a few steps toward me, only to receive an uppercut to the chin. He did not get up. He lay there out cold. Maria stood there horrified. I looked at her and told her to get in the truck. She got in, and we drove off. We did not reach home. We went straight to my lawyer. Maria tried to ask, but I just held up my hand. We walked into the office and were asked to move to the large conference room. We both sat on opposite sides of the table. The silence was dreadful. Soon, Ron Freeman, my lawyer, walked into the room and handed an envelope to Maria. You have been served. Now let me explain the terms. We have filed for divorce based on irreconcilable differences. You both hold no property, so there is nothing to discuss. His mother's house has yet to be legally transferred into his name, so you will not claim that. He will give you half of the money from your joint account. As we speak, the account has exactly half the money it had this morning. Since you earn more than him, there will be no alimony. There is nothing else from my end. Ron left the room, and Maria held the envelope and looked at me. I finally spoke. In case you want to contest it, I will change the reason for the divorce to adultery and ensure that every soul who knows your name will be aware of your cheating exploits. Every recording I have will be shared on all social media platforms. I will send this to your office and make sure that your cheating ass is fired and that you receive no recommendations anywhere. If you run away to a different city, I will follow you and ensure that the rest of your life is spent in fear of your name being tarnished. I hope I am clear. She nodded. I got up and walked out. She stood up and spoke. Don't you want to know why I did it? You wanted a lifestyle that I cannot provide. You wanted to fly high but needed someone at home when you landed back. You wanted happiness but were not willing to pay the price for it. Fast cars, big fancy hotels, and good food. Your blonde lover gave you everything that. Couldn't you think that right? Isn't it? I'm not sure if you will understand it or not, but he was just paying for his fun time. He was already married and looking for a cheap source of entertainment. How long would that have lasted? A few months? Then what? Would you have gone out hunting for another lover? Then another? Your happiness is just a state of mind. You can be happy with less, or you can be sad with a lot. Today, you stand here with an envelope in your hand and nothing else. Have a nice day, Maria. I left. I saw her in court a few months later. Never spoke to her, never saw her eyes. Just the court's orders, divorce granted. Steve never filed any complaint against me. Even if he had, he would have lost. There were cameras in the parking lot, and he would have come out as the aggressor. I did send Linda the videos and all the evidence of Steve's adultery. She did not waste time with him, threw him out of the house, and divorced him. I did hear a rumor that he was beaten up by Linda's brothers and spent a few days with some broken bones. He was divorced and had even lost his job. Linda's father was a connected man. Steve did sell his Mustang to pay for his settlement. I never told this to anyone, but Linda's father wanted to punish Maria as well. Linda stopped them. I left my job, and soon enough, I was hired back in my old job but in a different city. Life went on. Here I am today at Istanbul Airport, chief journalist for a big magazine. Loads of money, a great faithful wife, and an amazing daughter. I walked back into the lounge. My wife was still talking. Hours passed, and I stayed away from her as she constantly chatted with Maria, stealing glances at me. I was worried. I never hid my past from my wife, but I didn't know what Maria might be planning. A few hours later, I checked with the airport officials, and they confirmed the departure time. We got in the boarding queue, and after some grueling minutes, I was finally on the flight, sitting right beside my wife. She was smiling, and her smile was different than usual. I asked her what the discussion was about with that lady. Oh, that lady, your ex-wife, Maria, she said. I was just saying thanks. I gave her a puzzled look.
Thanks.
I asked, if she hadn't screwed up, how would I have gotten you? She smiled. Did she tell you that? I asked. No, she never talked about you. I read the court orders and your investigative material. They were in the attic. What were you two talking about? Nothing. I was just listening to how she missed her ex-husband and how she would trade everything to have a life like mine. I smiled, closed my eyes, and leaned back in my chair.